Sure.
Suparna, after 2 decades of leading an organization like NDTV, right, and building its own entire digital arm, what inspired you to transition into AI with Frammer AI?
It's a good question, and actually, it kind of came up abruptly. I was kind of, I think of myself as having been trained all my life by NDTV because I was there actually for nearly 3 decades. And what happened was that when there was going to be a change in ownership, I figured that this was a good time to go out and try something of my own. In particular, I'm really keen on building, and I think what I've really enjoyed through my career is seeing how tech can power content, right? So you can have the best content, but unless you have super tech, which contributes to the ease with which it's distributed, with which it's accessed, what the user design is like, and so on, right? Your content is very precious, but it's not going to unlock its potential unless you have really solid tech powering it. And that was something that a couple of us at NDTV had really excelled at. And so when there was a change in ownership, this was in February 2023, the two people who are now my co-founders decided to leave with me, and we decided to set up our own company. Now, what we have built at Frammer, or what we use AI for, is something that we felt a need for every day while at NDTV. And as content creators, or as your audience will know, any content publisher is aware of the fact that there is an attention economy, which is getting more and more stringent every couple of weeks, frighteningly. And the other thing is that everybody wants to watch short video on their phones. Yes. Now, content very often is produced for a linear feed, right? So it's long form, it's in landscape format, and what is required to actually convert that content into short, accessible clips is quite complicated because you need people from different teams and you need a lot of time. So as an example, let's say you have a 1 hour long interview, you would need a video editor, you'd need a graphic designer, you would need an editorial person who would decide what content to play up, you would need somebody who would publish that, and so on, right? Our idea was that if we had technology, automate all of that so that the human being is required just to review the content and to make any improvements or correct any issues, then actually instead of picking and choosing what content you can place online, you'd actually be able to do all of it. So the idea was, can you really maximize your content, right? And so when we looked at this as a problem statement, we looked at AI and where it was, and we felt that AI had evolved enough to be able to provide a healthy, robust, responsible solution. So that's then basically the genesis of Frammer and what I do now.
Understood. So, probably a podcast like this is an ideal use case where you have a long form content and, you use technology in a perfect sense to create a lot of relevant pieces for audiences to consume differently. And then they would probably be deciding, which part would be more relevant to them and coming on to the long form and looking at only that part so that, their time is actually saved. Brilliant. I think it's a very specific use case. In fact, I believe sports, entertainment, a lot of fields like this would need a tool like this. I think there's something really interesting that you guys are building. Now, when you were working with NDTV, right, you were managing a 1,200 member odd team. And what were the key strategies that you deployed to turn around, and how did you balance editorial and business priorities?
So I'll take the second part of that question first. And everything was in the service of our journalism and our content, right? So editorial was basically our North Star. And we had to figure out how to make business work according to that. So some of the things that really helped was, like I said earlier, and I can't stress this enough, the importance of using technology wisely and skillfully to do a lot of the heavy lifting, which means that you're not spending a ton of time and a ton of money on processes that can be automated, right? So one was using technology. I think the second difference that we introduced, which was quite unique to large media companies, legacy media companies, from the same stable as NDTV, was that we made each person pretty much accountable for both targets, and for traffic, right? So, and we were also very clear, traffic can't be, you just run 30 stories on what's trending or what's viral, and then that kind of gets you eyeballs. We wanted good, hard-hitting news content, which was in keeping with NDTV's branding. So I think the difference was in placing a lot of accountability on people, but that accountability also meant that individuals had autonomy, right? So they knew what the vision was, and they felt that they had a definitive role, a clearly defined role to play within that flow chart, right? So then they didn't resent the accountability because it actually was an enabler for them to be able to implement whatever their vision might be for whatever part of the business they were looking at. So I think accountability and collaborative accountability, again, right? Cooperative accountability. So that, and then definitely using tech very wisely, but always keeping in mind that what was the most essential was to have a product, i.e. content, that was respected, that was sought after, that was accurate, that was balanced, right? So all the processes that were put in place were done keeping these pillars in mind.
Understood. So one very important thing that you mentioned is, when I become an owner of a certain small piece within the organization, and when I get traffic, when I see the entire, space or gambit around my product, automatically, it becomes my baby, and the ownership and the dedication towards that increase. It's a very, brilliant strategy to put in, especially in, in the teams where you obviously would not be able to communicate with everybody day to day, but setting up such strategies and processes would definitely help. Right. And when you look at generative AI now, where on click of a button you have videos, you have images, you have textual content, how do you see AI transforming media and content creation in the next few years?
So to be honest, I don't think that the broadcasting business has seen as big a disruptor,
Okay.
in decades, right? So I would think that most people believe that the last big disruption for broadcast was when streamers came into the picture, when OTTs came into the picture, because they changed the business model completely. But in terms of technology, because OTT is a platform, right, so which is quite distinct. If you look at any conventional broadcasting business, the last big change happened about 20 years ago. The companies that provided the hardware and the software at that time have pretty much continued as the main service providers, right? Till AI came along. And what AI demanded and allowed was the creation of lots and lots of very agile technologies, which could be integrated very easily. They were pretty seamless in how quickly and how easily they could be integrated with existing workflows, with existing hardware, right? And secondly, what they allowed was a lot easier processes, right? The processes became much simpler. So whereas earlier on you needed a lot of different departments to come together to roll out something new, now, like for example, with our platform, you just need one user to operate it from beginning to end, right?
Correct.
So what that meant was that the pace at which change could be introduced because of AI, right, is very, very aggressive. Obviously, there are downsides to AI, and certainly nobody pretends that it is a perfect product. But I think if we are clear on our expectations of AI and what it is capable of, and if we are aligned to the fact that it should be used responsibly as a tool that greatly enhances and enables human beings, right, to do more creative and complex tasks, then we're onto something really big. But if we think that, we're going to sit back and then let, AI take over, whether we look at that as a hope or a threat, both those perspectives are incorrect, because actually AI is in service to what we do. We call the shots. So that's certainly the way that we should look at it.
Understood. And when we talk about traditional media to digital media, and now media which will be heavily content wise AI driven, what are those key skills that have remained consistent when you talk about building high performing teams?
Well, one is, I think, that how passionate is a team about content, because no matter how good an LLM is or generative AI is or technology is, it isn't a substitute for a human being's exposure to emotions, to experience at this stage, because AI is still relatively new, right? So the first thing is, how passionately does a team commit to the value of content, right? Do they live, breathe, sleep that content? And once everybody's clear on that, right? So there's that. Secondly, there has to be uh, an enthusiasm for embracing technology,
Hmm.
because many large organizations, and inertia sets in,
Right.
or there is a certain complacency which sets in of, abhi to chal hi raha hai, itna theek chal raha hai, right? Mujhe kuch naya seekhna padega, right? But unless teams are thirsty to experiment and to learn and to grow and to feel like, what can we add right now to our skill set, to our toolkit, to be able to perform better, to learn more, to be a better fit in an evolving landscape.
Right.
Unless you do that, you're going to find yourself at a dead end pretty soon, right? And that dead end is terrifying because it means that your teams are maxed out on capacity and on capability. And as a leader, you never want to be stuck in that position. So the main thing is to always foster an atmosphere which creates enthusiasm for learning and for adapting to new technology and new processes. Because in most large organizations, departments say, but we've been doing this the same way for 20 years, why would we change it? Well,
Right.
because you don't know what the change could bring in, right? The change could make life much easier. It could enable much more content. It could free up your own teams to do better things so that they're not doing mundane things. If you think about it, like till about 6, 7 years ago, right?
Hmm.
Human beings were sitting and transcribing video. It would take hours. A video comes in of a big interview, and then three people are sitting there transcribing it. Then it goes to somebody for proofreading. Then it is sent out, disseminated,
Correct.
for PR or whatever, right? Why would you want a human being to waste their time doing that now? They could be doing something that is much more fulfilling because
Right.
technology can prepare the transcript. Then a human being just has to review it, make changes, because again, nothing can substitute yet for a human being's expertise and experience. And use technology to make jobs more fulfilling and more creatively satisfying.
Interesting, so basically what we are saying is let technology do the heavy lifting, and
Yeah.
wherever we need emotions and brains to be applied, only that is where human steps in. Obviously the quality of work would increase. At the same time, the quantity would also increase, because there is something which is a tool which is automatically doing your work much more efficiently. And you are probably assisted a lot, and I think eventually efficiency, at the same time accuracy, both will increase with if we use a method like this. uh,
Mhm.
when you look at larger teams, right? When you look at hiring freshers in those larger teams specifically, what are those certain expectations that you have from these freshers, people who are coming out of colleges?
What is, I think that the main thing is, how passionate are they about learning, and do they have an inherent curiosity, right?
Mhm.
Because what happens is, you want people who come in and who are hungry to learn and who are hungry to grow. So a combination of aspiration and ambition, right? Because
Mhm.
you can't have one without the other. If you have one without the other, that's not a great candidate. So I think basically a certain curiosity to learn and to grow and to say, teach me how I can get the most out of this position, right? So are you willing to go beyond what the job outline is on just paper, right? Are you hungry to learn multiple parts of the business or of the workflow or of the process, whatever you are stepping up to do? Are you willing to say, hey, give me more work, right? Because I'll make the time for it, because I want
Mhm.
to see the more work I do, the more I will be exposed
Right.
to what the demands are, or what the end goal is, right? So it's pretty obvious things. It's not rocket science, but you'd be surprised at how often freshers come across as people who go, I'll be doing 9 to 5, 5 days a week, which everybody respects work-life balance. Everybody wants people to have downtime and to come back rejuvenated and excited. And also, unless you have downtime, you're not going to be a rich, full, well-rounded human being, which is what we all want at our offices, right? But we do want people who, when they're starting out, say, I want to push myself, I want to work hard, I want to work long hours, right? Because I want to learn. That's the main thing.
So, another thing that actually, this debate has ignited a lot since last few months, where one very important thing that we all miss out is, earlier when we used to do 9 to 5, the distractions were very low. In today's world, even in that 9 to 5, the distractions are so high that you end up doing a lot less, and then the expectation increases that you spend more time in office. Right? I think that is something which people end up missing out on when we talk about having work-life balance or having a distraction-free time. I remember, working in some other countries where people sit on their desk and eat their lunch, and they ensure that their lunch completes in 30 minutes so that they're able to complete their 9 to 5 and spend time with their family. But today, the freshers, I would say, or the new generation are so distracted even in that 9 to 5 that they end up sitting till 7, 8, and they feel that they are working way too much compared to everybody else. Right? Do you also feel something like this happens all the time?
Well, firstly, 9 to 5 is a misnomer because in the media world, there's no nine to
There's
five,
no
right?
9 to 5.
News
Right.
breaks at all times. And when we started out, I joined NDTV when I was, I think, 22.
Okay.
We would do night shifts because edit suites were limited, right? And so senior people would get the preferred day shifts, and the freshers or the rookies got the night shifts. And actually, we never saw it as a punishment. We loved it because all of us, we were young people working together. We'd all be working through the night together. We felt we got more hands-on experience because at night there's less pressure. So in terms of, you have more hours to edit. So it taught us how to edit. We could experiment with things. We would take a break. We would step out for a cup of tea, joke and laugh with each other. So firstly, the 9 to 5 concept in the world of media, at least, is just an illusion, right? That nobody works 9 to 5. The other thing is that, what you talk about as distractions, I mean, I don't think that there are more distractions now. People always had distractions. The nature of them may have changed. So maybe people spend more time looking at reels on their phones now. We used to go out more for walks and play in the park, right? Or people watch Netflix now. We used to read a lot more. So
Right.
if you're committed to working versus being distracted, you're going to work, right? So I don't think that it's any harder or any easier than it was. Certainly, I do feel that the world is a more stressful place now because of all the different demands on us. But
Hmm.
technology has also countered that by making things easier. Imagine there was a time when we had to physically type out on a typewriter every script. Now you can
Right.
dictate it into a phone. So while
Correct.
technology adds stress, it also provides solutions. And ultimately, I think the most important thing is discipline. Are you disciplined enough to say, I've watched my 20 minutes of whatever I wanted to. Now I'm going to focus on my job. While you're at work, are you disciplined enough to not check your social media accounts, right? How committed are you? Ultimately, what it comes down to is how committed are you to learning and growing as a professional, right? If you are, then you will find a way to create a balance for everything. If it's like, theek hai, chalta hai, then that's also okay. And you can skid by on it. I just don't think that that's going to get you very far necessarily.
Correct. 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 And talking about certain qualities, are there certain green flags that that are there in your mind that if I see something like this in a candidate, I would definitely like to work with them?
Yeah, I think that, it always comes across if a candidate is genuinely enthusiastic, right? And says, look, I have applied for this job. And the reason I want it is because I want to learn about this and this and this and this, right? And if they ask things like, do you think that apart from this, what are the other things that I could be involved in? Or if they say, I just want a chance to grow and to learn, right? These are very obvious green signals, right? Where you say this candidate really stands out. And I think the other thing is also, it sounds so obvious, but again, it's shocking how rarely it happens is when candidates come to an interview really well prepared, where you can tell that they've made a cheat sheet for themselves of the kind of points that they want to express about themselves, as also a list of questions that they may have for you. And most importantly, have they done research, right? Have they really bothered to read up about what your company does, what the space does, what that ecosystem is like? You'd be surprised. I was interviewed by a journalist last week, and
Mm-hmm.
after the first 2 minutes of a supposed interview, the journalist said to me, "But could you just explain what your company does?" And I thought, "But that's your job. You should have done that homework before you come to me." So, these kind of things come across and make a candidate or somebody who's already employed look terribly unprofessional, and it just dents your own credibility, your own standing. So, these again are obvious things to have done your homework and to come into something really well prepared. Also, are there one or two sentences that you can say or things that you can express which have high recall, so that the person who's interviewing you never forgets that. Because otherwise, remember that you're one of 20 candidates being interviewed for a job, right? So are you leaving the interviewer with something unique which that interviewer will remember, so that even if I don't know what your name is, I'll remember it was the person who quoted XYZ, right? So are you creating differentiation?
Very interesting point. And probably we have this discussion with a lot of people, and there's something, which every candidate should look at, that a person might not be able to place your name, but he would be definitely able to recognize that somebody said this and he was something which I would like to work with. Brilliant. I think it's a very, very interesting point. Our viewers would definitely be would love to imbibe something like this whenever they go for their interviews next. And on the flip side, I would also like to know any red flag that you look at and you say, I want to stay away from this candidate.
Yeah, there are candidates who, like I said, if somebody says, but what exactly does your company do, right? Well, that's immediately you're out.
Right.
Or if somebody says, I like only this, and I don't want to learn about other areas. And you'd be surprised, people do say, I don't want to learn about other things. Specialization is wonderful and much needed, but certainly not at the entry level, right? And also, even when you're much older, like at my stage in life, I've switched from doing television to AI because I felt like I needed to update my skill set to cope with a new media landscape, right? So specialization, but along with, a complete understanding of the ecosystem as it stands. So, other red flags, again, should be obvious: showing up late to an interview, right? Not having a clear list of questions, not asking things like, so what would my specific KRAs be, or which departments would I be interacting with, or asking things like, what, according to you, it would make for a great candidate for this job, right? What is it that you're looking for? Just things like that. So I think to come to an interview having done a little bit more homework and having a cheat sheet, whether you keep that in your head, with a great memory, or you write it down, but and also being really punctual and being articulate. Clear communication skills make all the difference, not just at the interview stage, but also once you have entered the workforce, right? So how are you expressing yourself and presenting yourself?
Very nice. So Suparna, one very important thing, considering that you have had a flavor in your career of traditional media, television, as you said, then digital, now you're working on AI, right? Somebody who is just starting their career now, probably who have graduated last year in courses like BMM, BMS, right? What is that one piece of advice that you would like to give them so that they stand out in their career, which would be like decades from now?
I think it's just never stop learning, right? Just basically never stop learning. So one should never feel like I have been in this field for 10 years, 20 years, so now I know enough, because the space keeps changing, tech keeps changing, and it's really easy to get dated in your skill set without being aware of it. So that is one, which is always keep learning. And I add on one more. I know you asked for one, but forgive me because I'm keen to stress this as well, is the importance of always being having certain amount of humility, right? No matter how successful one is, of never having hubris, and of always being, recognizing the value that it always takes a team, and that nobody, absolutely nobody, is indispensable, and of being mindful that everybody has skill sets and flaw sets, right? So being as mindful of your flaws as you are of your skills. And then trying, obviously, to have more skills and fewer flaws as you go along.
And I'm sure, as you grow through your career, you actually become more humble anyway, because you understand the entire, space. Because when you just start, you are in your head, probably, everything. And then when you start working and you meet a lot of individuals who have done it, who have been there, done it, you automatically start becoming humble. But it's very interesting that if you actually have that quality, when you start, you end up soaking up a bit more or a lot more, and you become a better individual anyway. Very, very interesting. And as we all keep hearing, with respect to AI coming in, what are those job roles that will exist in media houses or in companies, which are broadcasting companies in the next 4 or 5 years? What are those new roles that will be created? What are those roles which will go extinct probably? And what are those roles which will stay consistent?
So, there are certain roles that have been eradicated already, right? Like I was saying earlier on, you needed large teams to, uh, it's a little bit technical, so it may not appeal to a wider audience. But as you get a broadcast stream, to give you a simple example, right? You want to cut a long video into short clips. You would require a team that would receive the live feed. There was a time when at companies like like my previous one, we would have a person dedicated on every shift just to transcribing, right? Because whether it is the interviewer or a reporter or the desk, they all need a transcript of an interview or a story or whatever to refer to. So
Right.
those jobs have already been replaced, right? And the people who did those jobs have hopefully been upskilled and moved into other areas where they are able to utilize their time better. So I think that those changes are already in motion. And when you
Mhm.
ask about what could be career skills in an AI-defined world, right? I think it would be: do you understand as an individual how to utilize AI to its maximum potential, right?
Mhm.
So if you are a coder, how much are you already using AI to do the groundwork, to do maybe the bottom 80 or 90%? And then are you able to work with it to fix the bugs that it may throw up or to
Right.
correct it, right? And once you've done that, the next time around, are you able to make your starting point the finishing point of the previous step,
Right.
right? So are you using AI better and better to do work that you don't have to do, right? So that's an example of a coder. As far as media companies are concerned, there's going to be huge value in prompt engineering, right?
Hmm.
How are you using AI to create things? And are you, as a content creator, irrespective of what part of the process you are involved in, whether you are an editor or whether you are a writer or whether you are a producer, right? Are you able to wisely maintain a balance between what AI can deliver and do for you
Right.
versus outsourcing everything to AI and then blaming AI when it makes a mistake, right?
Yes.
People say, oh, like, AI makes mistakes. I saw something in the newspapers the other day which said, a major media publication had to apologize because they ran a headline which referred to the prime minister as a former prime minister. Now,
Right.
that's a very serious mistake, but that was not made by AI. So, as long as we recognize that as individuals and as users, the controls are with us. And now, how can we get this new version of tech to do all the stuff that we don't necessarily need to do anymore? And how can we train it, like I said, to be a very central part of our toolkit and to never be resistant to technology, right? Because many people still go, nee, AI is not responsible. Get abhi nahi yaar AI. You can keep waiting till it's perfect. And by
Right.
that time, your workforce in that organization is completely dated, right?
Absolutely.
And your competition is becoming more and more cost and time efficient.
Correct. 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 I think that's a very interesting thought. Probably people who would not pick up in pieces would end up become obsolete because perfection is always an enemy of good, right? Or profitability, as they say, right? So
Yeah,
it's
and to
like
connect with your audience, it means that we would not hire any freshers, right? We would only hire people with lots of work experience if you want to wait for, a mature experience, right?
interesting. Yeah, I think that's very interesting point. So to be very frank, if I just look at certain very important points that you said, one, obviously curiosity, as you said, is probably one of the most important factors. Second, this something for which will also apply to a lot of businesses, that instead of waiting for AI to be perfect, pick up those pieces, whatever it can do, and see what you can do on top of it, so that you don't become obsolete when it becomes perfect. I think that leaves us with a very interesting thought, and I'm sure it will help a lot of audiences. Thank you so very much for your time today, Suparna. uh, a very, very, very insightful discussion we had with you. I'm sure next time, probably when we meet in person, we will be able to understand a bit better, and we'll also be able to use the tools that you are creating and see if it can be even extrapolated to businesses like education or our businesses.
Sure, sure. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. And, young people really are so full of eagerness and enthusiasm. And the world really is theirs now. So
Correct.
I look forward to meeting all kinds of bright candidates. And thank you again for your time.